Jennifer Edwards, psychic medium.
Oh, Janine, this has been a long time between cups of tea, hasn't it?
I know, so much has happened since the last video we did.
Huge to both of us. And
yes.
Also to the world.
We've both had relocations.
Yeah.
And we're all plugged in and ready to go and start a new chapter.
Yes, and hopefully upwards, you know. I think we're all over the stress and turmoil and the lack of direction that we've all had.
Yeah. So what I thought today, Jennifer, is you and I are doing a workshop in a couple of weeks here on the Gold Coast on the 14th of August on the Gold Coast, and see our Facebook page, Janine and Jenny, for more details. So in the lead up to that, I thought we could do a video just to get us back into sync with each other. And you gave us the brilliant idea that we should do another talk on Australia and what's going on with Australia. Now, you and I don't usually do what we call in astrology, mundane astrology. We don't usually do readings on countries, but it is really fun when we do. So we did one 2 years ago, almost to the date, in the middle of the crisis. I remember it being very grim when we did our last video on Australia, and we both had a go at predicting what might happen. So Jennifer, can you tell us what we talked about in that last reading? And you can find that last video on our Facebook post if you scroll back 2 years.
Yeah, or on YouTube. It's on YouTube too.
YouTube, yeah.
You know, I haven't looked at it for 2 years, so I have no idea. But one of the things I remember being really puzzled, Janine, with one of the things that Spirit gave me after you talked about your astrology for Australia, and was that I could see this mass exodus of people from a southern state and or from the middle of the southern, you know, it's down south, but in the middle of Australia. And of course, we know now Victorians fled their state in droves and still do it. So I guess that, and I saw them all going to the east, mainly to the east coast, and Queensland, which is where they went. So that was interesting because I didn't know why.
Yeah. Well, we didn't at that point. That was really in the heat of it all, where we had restrictions and we weren't sure what was going to happen. What I do remember talking about is that we would turn a corner economically in 2021. And that seemed completely absurd, because I think not long after we did that video, they announced that there was a recession. But I still maintained that we would start a whole new economic cycle in the new year, which was 6 months later in early 2021. And that's because the planet Saturn was on our sun and Saturn had crossed the ascendant. And I'm going to just share the screen so that we can have a look at the Australia chart while we're talking.
Okay.
Just for a little while.
Yep.
So Saturn was just crossing the ascendant here, which means there's a whole new chapter. And I did feel very strongly at that point that we would have an economic boom of some sort. Now, because property is such a strong indicator in our chart for Australia, I did predict that we'd have some sort of a boom that would be very materialistic for us. So it wouldn't be a technology boom, it would be something very material. And we did. We had a property boom, which just go figure, nobody could work out really why that was happening.
Huge. We've had a huge property boom. Massive.
Incredible.
And especially and sales in a lot of retail shops went up, you know, all the deliveries at home and everything was locked up.
How many businesses boomed? And amazing. We still can't work out why, how. It was all very unpredictable, wasn't it? Which is very Aquarius, an unpredictable boom. I'm not sure that other countries followed the same suit as us.
No, they didn't. Apparently we were again unique in the world.
Yes, very unique. And of course we've got so much Aquarius in the Australian chart, where Aquarius rising, we've got Sun, Pluto, Saturn and Venus all in Aquarius. And for the astrologers watching, I use a whole sign house system, so it might look slightly different to yours. But of course, Aquarius is about being individual and unique. And when we had the global financial recession, we were economically unique then too. And here we are again in an economically unique boom during a COVID crisis. So I do remember talking about that. So I'll stop sharing for a moment. So today what I wanted to talk about is what happened after that and what's ahead for Australia. Now, I believe, looking at the chart, our big COVID crisis came early this year, okay? So I know that they were telling us we were in a COVID crisis in 20 and 21, but it looks to me like we were suffering really not until earlier this year.
This year has been quite bad.
Yeah, so even though we were told about the crisis overseas and we were anticipating it and we behaved as if we were, if this astrology chart was a person, I would say they were going to get sick in January, February of this year. And I'm from Queensland and I noticed everybody went down here. Well, whereas prior to that, we heard about it, but we didn't really experience it. So I know us Queenslanders, we've been sick ever since up here. And I think New South Wales has been pretty similar, and I'm not sure about Victoria.
Everywhere. It's everywhere. And I'm in South Australia now, and it's chock-a-block in the hospitals.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere.
And that is, if I just start sharing again, that is the effect of Saturn on Pluto in the first house. The first house is the physical body. So it's the physical body of the people and the physical body of the land. And when Saturn goes over Pluto, and Pluto represents infections and all things grave and serious. When Saturn was over Pluto, I believe we were at our sickest.
Okay.
And we're still at the tail end of that now. Now, the next thing that Saturn does on its journey over 3 years is it hits itself at birth. So we have a Saturn return coming up. Now, if you've been around the block listening to astrologers for a while, you'll know that the Saturn return is a very big deal in someone's life. So we have one at 28 and one at 58. But in a country, we have one every 29 years. So we've got one coming up, and we've got one coming up in the new year in 2023, and we'll start to feel the effect of that now. And what happens in a Saturn return is we hit a wall. So we hit fear, we hit hardship, we hit desperation, and then we have to make some very concrete changes. And we all know when we were 29, this happened, and to a lesser extent, 58. I don't know how many Saturn returns Australia's had. And just by the way, I'm taking the Discovery Day of Australia as a chart. Some people don't, but I'm taking when white people landed. So I don't know how many Saturn returns we've had, but if I just extrapolate here, I'd say Australia is going to hit a wall, and it will be later this year and early next year. And we're going to have to take this very seriously. The good news is it doesn't last forever. So I would say between 1 and 2 years, and the effect of it 3 years at the most. But it's really going to be a change of gear, like we're changing from second gear to third gear. It's a complete change in the way we do things. I think there's going to be changes to do with property. And the reason why I think that is because Saturn is conjunct Venus, and Venus represents wealth, i.e. money, and also represents property. So I think the Saturn return is going to drag in issues around property, and it's very hard to predict all the details, but I can say that this is going to be around individuality, which is an Aquarius thing, like people's personal freedoms are going to be, addressed, looked at. There's going to be change around our personal liberties, around property and money. There's going to be issues come up around community as well, which is another Aquarius thing. Community, sharing, making sure that everybody gets a fair deal, making sure everything's equal. So it's really hard to know. I can look at it from the outside, but I don't know exactly how that's going to affect us. But the end result will be a growth spurt. Now, when you finish your Saturn return as a human, you become more mature. So I can only gather that, you know, some hardship, us hitting the wall economically, is going to result in a much stronger economy, a much stronger country. But there will be some suffering, there's no doubt.
So can I ask a few questions in here, Janine, just to clarify it for people listening? So I just want to ask, what's the first house mean? If you
First house in a human is their body.
Okay.
So health issues come from up.
In Australia is about the island itself.
It's about the land.
Yep. The structures.
And the people's physical bodies on the land. So it's the health of the nation.
Okay. So when a person goes through Saturn return, it's usually, you know, I guess they used to call it a midlife crisis. And when you're younger, it's, you know, a big change. Am I with the right person, doing the right job, living in the right state? Do I want to travel overseas? Do I want to get married and have kids? Whatever it is. So if we put that onto Australia, maybe it's also about, are we going in the right direction?
Yep.
Maybe change of direction. Maybe it's about about looking at the laws and bringing changes in there.
Yep.
Maybe it's about people waking up a bit more and demanding more transparency, don't want to walk this path anymore, want to do right-hand turn.
That may be involved in it. Usually with Saturn, first comes the hardship, and Saturn likes to obstruct and stop and slow down. So I'm figuring like I said, we're going to hit some sort of wall economically where things are just not going to look like they're progressing. And then we have to workshop that and nut out the problems and do a lot of problem solving in order to, you know, reboot and start again. So there'll be hardship first. Saturn takes away before it, you know, it's the hard taskmaster. It says, I'm going to remove your privileges so that you can become a stronger person. So I'm predicting that we will have financial hardship before we sort of do a reboot, a retake, and plan a better way.
Well, with Saturn, I know Saturn very well, and it won't be easy. It won't be easy, and everything you try will be a dead end lots of time.
So we'll get to some dead ends. There's things that are definitely not going to work. And it ties Venus in with it at the same time, which is about money. And it's also about property. You know, Venus is about the things that you value and the material world. So I think for the material world of a country is money and property and possessions. So we may not be making as much profit out of our land and the value of our housing and our material world, and we're going to have to, you know, it's going to pull back before we can refocus and make a better plan. So there's a big reassessment phase coming, possibly a change in government. So
would it also affect things like mining, agriculture?
Possibly only agriculture, not mining. Yeah, no, agriculture is also the fruit of the land, which is Venus. So definitely all the things we produce on the land from the things that we own, and that Venus does include livestock.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So
that's for the next 2 to 3 years, you think?
Yeah, and we'll start to feel the pinch after Christmas. So it could be drought, recession, it could be devaluing of our economy in some way. But you know, good thing is it's not a long period of time. Saturn will sort of make this process of hardship to maturity. It'll do it in a couple of years at the most. So I would not be planning to invest next year. And if you do and you're waiting for a return, wait longer. You know, maybe wait 5 years instead of, you know, having a quick turnaround of your investments in a year or two. Next year's not good. Now, Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been telling me this for a few months, haven't you?
I have. I did a reading for someone, and she is in finance, and she asked me about investments, and I was a bit taken back actually to see that next year is going to be very difficult as far as companies go. So I feel like there may be some bigger companies that will downsize or disappear. And I think that's slowly starting in the construction industry. It's mainly in Victoria at the moment. But next year, there's going to be some bigger companies that we thought would never fail or decrease in size is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, that ties in because Saturn is all about failure. When you hit a Saturn return, usually you fail at something.
Yeah.
And things just don't work the way they were, and you get asked to let that go.
Yeah.
Let all your failures go, pull your socks up and work hard to achieve a different outcome. So failure is often the beginning.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be next year that it happens, starts happening. I also felt that for I do feel next year is going to be very difficult for a lot of people. It's not going to be the same. And I always tell people, you know, just enjoy your life because next year is going to be tough. It's going to be the beginning of toughness. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that. But I'm mainly looking at the financial industry here. And that affects people from the poorest to the wealthiest. And let me tell you, in the long run, the wealthy will not be affected. They will. Yeah. So there's going to be poor and wealthy alike who lose a lot of money. And it's going to be a big shock to a lot of people because they think they're invincible and they're not going to be. So it's going to be a real leveler, I feel, in some ways. And not one hit everyone, but it will hit more than we would want. And so the other thing that I feel, I just feel there's a big shock coming. So do you, in your chart there, do you see much in earth changes coming?
I think we've had a lot of earth changes in Australia. While Saturn's been going through the first house, this is all about our earth changes in Australia. As for the general earth, I can't see that, but certainly in Australia we've had that. And have we not had a lot of landscape movement go on? We've had fires and we've had a lot of floods in the last 2 to 3 years, and that's the impact of Saturn going through the first house because the landscape is the body of the country.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think most of what Australia is going to experience is has already been, but what do you think?
Well, I think, as you were talking about our last video, one of the things I did cut out, as if you remember, you know, I said there was going to be a lot of flooding on the coast of Australia. I said that 2 years ago, but I cut it out because everyone was so depressed. I didn't think they needed to hear that on top.
I know, and I reminded you recently that there's a lesson in that as a psychic medium. Never cut out your best predictions.
That's true.
Because they probably come true and then nobody will give you any credit for it.
No, that's right. So What I said then was that there was a lot of flooding coming to the East Coast, and but I also saw a lot of people going to the East Coast and Queensland to live. But I still don't feel it's over, Janine.
Not quite.
I don't feel it's over yet. I still feel that there's going to be, because in that prediction, I also saw it affecting New Zealand very badly, and it hasn't done that as yet. My problem is when I do some predictions like this, I can sometimes be 5 years ahead. And then I just think, oh, you know, I got that wrong, but it comes true. So that's my biggest difficulty is timing, but I still feel, and I'm going to stand by it, there will be a massive flooding along the east coast of Australia that comes from the sea, not from our water in the rivers. I feel it will come from the sea. It will affect New Zealand a great deal. And I still think that's to come yet. And maybe in this Saturn return of 3 years, maybe it will happen in that period.
Yeah.
But because if it's about new changes, for me, Saturn returns are about starting a new life, and as I said, you know, looking at things and changing things to make it better, or
rebuilding. There's a lot of rebuilding that has to
so that's a great word. So rebuilding. So yes, I still feel there's more to come. The East Coast somehow, and from the sea. That's what I think. And it will affect New Zealand a lot. So I do feel we'll have a lot of refugees over from New Zealand as well.
Wow.
The big changes around Australia that I see coming in the future won't happen for a long time, but this will be the start, and it's going to start in the Pacific Ocean there, further up towards the Northern Hemisphere, and it will come down that way. That's what I feel. So I also feel that there may be problems, therefore, maybe it's because of it, or maybe it's because of changes in energy. I feel that southern states are going to get very cold, and I feel like it's because there's going to be a big energy supply problem for heating as well. So if you can, you know, get some solar or get some wood stoves or something. The other thing I wanted to say is they keep saying the climate change is going to get warmer. I think it's going to get colder.
Well, that's really going to affect a lot of people's predictions, isn't it?
Yes, I think there's going to be a cool change, not a hot change. Now, in saying that, some places will suddenly get hot weather like UK is having now, right? But overall, I feel it will be cooler. Overall, I don't feel...
That's the gods playing a cosmic joke on us, isn't it? Because we're all believing that it's warming, and then they're going, well, we'll show you what's going on. You don't tell us what's going on.
No, that's right. And I also feel that there'll be changes in the sky as well coming. That will start next year.
Wow. Well, they're all the things I can't see. What I thought we could talk about is, you know, I know that there may be some wealth issues in our country coming up, some restrictions around the economy and rebuilding and all of that. That can be a little bit daunting. So what I thought I'd look at, Jennifer, is what to invest in Australia. If you wanted to make money in Australia, what are the good industries in Australia to invest in and work in?
Or even to start.
Yeah. So Australia's second house of money and income is ruled by Pisces. Now, that means Australia's good at all things to do with Pisces, and Pisces rules water and gas. Okay, so we're very good at making money out of our water, which includes our beaches. So we're very good at making money out of the shoreline. And how much industry is on the shoreline?
Heaps.
almost all of it.
Mhm.
So everything to do with water, and that includes, water energy. I mean, I'm all for desalination, even though that's a contentious issue, but making money out of the ocean itself, making money out of things like dams, hydro, and all of those things, boating, yachting, harbours, things like that, anything to do with the water. It also rules gas. So, of course, we've got big gas plants in Australia. It rules things like oil as well, oil and petrol and all things that are liquid, and how much industry is around creating liquids in this country.
Well, we have got so much gas. We've got 200 years of supply of gas in Australia, despite what they're telling us.
Yeah, that's right.
We do have 200 years of gas supplies sitting to be mined.
Yeah. So there's those very traditional areas of income to invest in. Now, some would say, invest, maybe 50 or 100 years ago, it looked like farming was the great investment, but this is not farming. This is not agriculture, and we're really not making that much money out of those areas anyway. And if we did, it's quite transitory, but certainly water and gas and oil are what Australia will consistently make money out of. And then you've got the other aspect. Sorry, we're going to say something?
So you could also include in that hydroponics.
Hydroponics. Now I'm going to get creative. The other areas of Pisces are things like the arts. So music, sound, and imagery, like graphic design, pictures, paintings, things that are beautiful, things that we create that are escapism as well, to invest in, like virtual reality and things like that. And then you've got the downside of Pisces. Oh, actually, I was going to say welfare. Pisces rules welfare. And have we not got one of the biggest welfare departments of any country? So there's a lot of money to be made in welfare, and that includes like social work, human services, not-for-profit organisations.
That's right.
Yeah, humanitarian projects. And then we social services, Centrelink, Medicare, things like that. I mean, huge industries. And I know that they're government run, but they do provide a huge amount of income to providers attached to the welfare system. And then you've got all the illegal things. Now, Pisces does rule some illegal activities like drugs. So there's a lot of money to be made in drugs, unfortunately, in this country. There's a lot of money to be made in secret enterprises. So Pisces, it can be quite shady. So it's about, smoke screens and doing things behind the scenes, including drug operations, drugs and crime. So they're the three areas of Pisces that I thought are really interesting to discuss. And we're not saying that other industries don't boom, and they may be transitory, but these are the consistent ones, the consistent, reliable industries to invest in that just don't change. No matter what happens, it doesn't change. So with all of this flux in the economy, what are the go-to industries in this country? Interesting that real estate is not part of this picture. So it may be that there's money to be made in real estate, but that's just a phase. It's not always going to be like that.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the dark side of Pisces. I'm just finished reading a new book out on the dark side of finances in Australia. And the most interesting thing when you talk about real estate, it's not part of it. It actually is because that's where the dark money goes into.
Oh, true.
right?
Money laundering, yeah.
Money laundering is going through offshore accounts into Australia through the real estate industry. And of course, Australia refuses to do anything about it. We're the most lax in the world and they won't fix it.
Yeah.
Also interesting that you said that about drugs, because we are the biggest payers in the world for drugs.
Yeah, and that includes medication and illegal drugs. Anything that's escapist.
Yes.
So whether we're talking about painkillers or we're talking about heroin, it's all the same.
Yep. And they funnel a lot of drugs into Australia because they get not 10 times, but 1,000 times more for the drugs here. So that's pretty interesting. And Australia is considered at the moment to be the go-to country to launder money.
Amazing.
All countries in the world, Australia is pinpointed, and New Zealand. So that's really interesting that we've got that.
But I don't believe that real estate's always going to be a booming industry here.
Oh, no. Everything has its cycles. The downturn in real estate starts next year.
Yeah.
Probably the end of this year.
And then I think we're going to be on a budget for a few years. But there's always, consistent industries. And we found that through COVID, some industries strengthened.
Yes, they did.
And some industries were very weak.
Yep. So it's just amazing. There were human beings are very entrepreneurial, aren't they, really, at base? And so if something is restricted, we're like water, really. We'll go around the corners or through the cracks and find a new way to bring an income in or to start a business. There's many businesses that started in Australia that have ended up being large businesses.
I remember when everybody was losing their jobs during COVID, and then at the tail end of all that, the research showed that there were 3 top professions to get into post-COVID. And I think the top one was nursing, for obvious reasons. And then there was human services, like welfare. And that's definitely Pisces. Anything where hospitals are ruled by Pisces. Hospital, jails, anywhere where we care for people who are wounded.
Right.
Okay, so it's interesting that we made that prediction that they're the top 2 professions to get involved in. And then you had all these people that were unemployed enrolled for nursing, and there were mass subsidies in education at that time.
Yes, that's true.
And of course, as you know, I work in the drug and alcohol sector, and we didn't suffer during COVID.
No.
So they're the healthy industries to be involved in.
And the public service, of course, didn't suffer.
No.
Either.
No. And we'll always have a strong public service.
Yeah.
By the look of this chart. The other strengths that we have in our country is over here, sport, recreation, games, and leisure. So, if you want to be in a successful industry, all the ones that I mentioned are good for creating salary and making money, but if you want to get involved in a successful industry, we'll always be good at sport. Will always be the leisure continent, the place where people go for holidays and entertainment. So casinos are always going to be big for us, especially Gemini in the area of leisure and games and risk-taking. Gemini is all about using wit and cleverness. So gambling is going to be a big part of our economy in the future.
Well, it is. It already is. It's huge. And Geminis do get bored easily.
Yeah.
So, they need a lot of things to do.
And Gemini also rules computers. Now, one of my clients has made his fortune on online gambling. And during COVID, he stopped the in-person ticket, the hard copy ticket production, and went completely to online. And so I think, with Gemini, their technology and gambling is also a big industry to get into.
Right.
All the betting online, the entertainment online.
Yep. Okay.
So there's a few pluses for our audience who might be involved in different types of professions. Had you thought of that before? Gambling and in those areas?
Well, I hadn't come into my mind to look at it, but I knew the gambling industry in Australia is massive. It's huge. We've got all the vices we're very good at.
That's actually very true. We're very good at having a good time.
Yes.
And that fifth house is all about how we like to play. And
Yes.
with Jupiter there, we play to excess in Australia. Everything we do for pleasure is to excess.
Exactly.
And hence we're a very addicted nation for that reason, whereas other countries do things quite moderately.
Yeah, and it's gone from my head. I was going to say something about gambling. It's gone. I'll just
I'm talking about living it up, drinking a lot, taking drugs, sex comes into it too, all of the fun stuff. We do more and more and more with Jupiter there, and Chiron's there too, which means that we suffer a lot through it. It's not just fun, we actually get sick from it.
That's what I was going to say. I should imagine that area will probably explode if there's a downturn. People do tend to gamble more to earn money quickly if they need it. So would that also cover things like short-term loan sector and financial sectors, the loan sharks and things like that may also bloom?
All the things we do to get off, to release stress. We do everything to excess. We party hard, we gamble hard, we do hard drugs, we even, our risk-taking enterprises, we might do them to excess.
Yeah, we do.
Predicting on the stock market, doing too much of that. So there's another angle as to what's ahead. So when things get tough, we might do a lot more excessive recreational activities on the other side.
I would absolutely hazard a guess that will happen.
Yeah. There you go. So that's about all I have to say. Anything else you want to say, Jennifer?
Well, I was just going to ask you, so through this Saturn return, and I can see there's some businesses that won't stay afloat or will downsize. I'm just wondering, how will migration or will there be a migration of people around Australia or out of Australia, do you think?
I don't see that being involved in this. I think we've had that. I think our migration issues to and from Australia or around the States have already occurred in this phase. So I can't see anything else. I wouldn't be surprised if gender issues come up quite strongly next year, whether there's a stronger Me Too movement for women or, a transgender political statement the government make. I wouldn't be surprised if that's tied in.
Okay.
Some sort of legislation around marriage, divorce, relationships, gender. It may come into it, but I don't see migration themes.
Okay. So with the Saturn return that's coming, starting, would that also affect, if you're saying it's affecting people's body, our country, people's body, so it could also be a change in weather structure, it could be a change in, could also, if it's affecting people's body, maybe there's more sicknesses or death happening next year?
Yeah, there could be that too. I think it's not so much the atmosphere, I think it's the effect that the atmosphere has on the land itself.
Well, that's what
So, you know, droughts and floods and the effect on the land is the issue.
Okay.
And I think the coldness theory is really interesting because Saturn is a cold planet. It's a planet of hardship, but also feeling cold. You know, they've all got that, you know, Mars is a hot planet, Saturn's a cold planet. And I think you might be onto something there. We might have some very, very cold weather that affects the ecosystems, you know, to create some sort of, I don't know about drought, but some sort of dryness or some sort of barrenness, perhaps, because Saturn's a barren, sort of starving, cold planet.
Yeah, it's definitely a planet of a shortage of resources.
And exactly.
So I think maybe you might be on about water, with not only maybe a shortage of water, although it's going to be cold. I don't think it's that so much, but maybe growing things may be hard. So maybe need to do hydroponics in a shed or in glass houses, or, you know, in not all states, but some states. So there may be a shift in the way we grow things as well. It won't be so open, and, you know, we've got so much good luck with growing food. Maybe there may be a change in how we approach that.
I think you're onto something. When you said lack of resources, I went, that is what it is.
Yeah.
It's a lack of resources, and what those resources are, I would love to know.
Well, there'll be money.
And I'd invest in them.
Yeah. Yeah. So
could even be just a shortage in the supermarket chains.
There will be
those things.
Agriculture.
Shortage of supplies. So, yeah, if you want to stock up on water, material supplies, maybe not stock up on housing just at this time.
No. And get some money, get some cash money around for you in case the banks close. So if you want me to, I'll have a look myself and see. I don't know whether I'll get anything, because I think we've covered most of it. Did you have a look at the Victorian chart by any chance?
No, I didn't. Maybe we should do that in another video.
Yeah, because it'd be really interesting to see what's going to happen with Dan. Although I think we brought that up in the last one. I must go back and listen to that. So let me just have a look here. I know you mentioned there may be a change of government. I was talking to another psychic in Adelaide who's quite well known around Australia, male, and he thought there would be a change of government as well. He thought because there would be a whole lot of independence and they couldn't govern. Well, that hasn't happened. But you saying there might be a change of government, there might be. So let's have a look. So when I tune into Canberra, what I get mainly is like a volcanic eruption happening in Canberra. Now, that's not literal because it's not likely to happen. But if we take it as symbolic meaning, I think there may be an earthquake or a big eruption in Canberra that causes damage, maybe to the sitting government, right? Or maybe it's going to come up under. They're showing me it's coming up.
Unearthing. Unearthing. And could that be metaphorical, like corruption or something like that? Unearthing something.
A revelation, you know, it's coming up to let all the steam and the muck out. So there could be a revealing of information, but it's not what we think. It's going to be out of the blue and not what we think. So it's going to be quite a shock, I think, when that comes, 2023. So it won't be yet. But when it happens, it's going to be, we never saw that.
Well, I've got March 2023, February, March, as the beginning of the Saturn return, the official one, but we feel it in the year before.
There you go, 2023.
Mm.
So let me see what else I can get here. This, I don't know why, but I feel like there's going to be a, talking about water, there's going to be a rising up of water in the corner of Queensland there, around the Great Artesian Basin. You know, we have that big underground sea. There's going to be a rising of that water up onto the surface of the land or something like that around that time. Going to be happening in Queensland, and it's going to be permanent, and it's going to bring prosperity to that area. I can see the birds coming, and they're showing me animals coming. My problem is timing, because I could be 10 years away, but that's definitely going to happen. There's something to do with water. It's on the edge of the desert, Simpson Desert, but it's not in the desert. It's in Queensland. So it's where it's drier in Queensland, northish, in that dry area, there's something's going to come up. So I'm wondering if when there's a change or there's an earth change that affects our East Coast, that brings that up as well. You don't know, do you? So
we could funnel water there.
Yeah, but it's not this. This is like a lake that comes up, and it's pure water. It's not salt, I don't think. But I can see birds around it and animals, and eventually, in many decades, maybe centuries to come, there'll be a new city there. Oh, there you go. Let me see what else.
There's somewhere to invest.
Yeah, but who knows the timing. I do feel that there is, in New South Wales, in the country, there's going to be a group of people that will start, not a revolution, but or have an impact on changes to government in New South Wales. I feel like there is going to be, you know, like the Southern Cross banner had in the gold mines in Victoria, and there was this revolution of people. I feel like that's going to come from New South Wales. Now, I know we've had a lot of demonstrations and things like that, but this is a new cohort of people. I feel maybe it may be farmers. It may be farmers from that, you know, really rich area of farmland. I feel it will be farmers, and I feel it will be farm women behind it. They'll be really angry. What else? Western Australia is going to be much the same. It's just going to go on. Not going to be much change there. It's really the east, even South Australia is going to be much the same. Tasmania is going to be much the same. It's going to be considered to be an island that a go-to island, you know, like to get away from all the riots and the upheaval, because there's going to be a lot of angry people in Australia, and Tasmania less so. So I feel like it's going to be like the spot to go to live for a while. It's going to be an area where people can refuge. It's going to be quite a refuge type state. That's how it's going to be looked upon.
That's a good area of investment, Tasmania.
Well, you know, Tasmania and all that will eventually go when the Great Reset happens, but it's good for now, good for our lifetime, because we won't be around when that happens. And Victoria, where I used to live for such a long time, I feel Victoria may be at war for a while yet. I feel like there's more trouble coming for Victoria, I'm sorry to say. A lot of illegal money going into Victoria at this time. And so I feel like there's a war between good people in Victoria, in government, and the underworld is quite strong in Victoria. So I feel like there'll be some battles still with Victoria. It's not clear yet.
Oh, well, there's some really new ideas, Jennifer.
I could be completely wrong, but it sounds fine. But otherwise, I just sort of feel, and Spirit is showing me that there's going to be a lot of battles next year with people. A lot of people are going to be very angry, and a lot of people are going to be, it's going to be failures of crops as well.
Failure, there you go. Failure and barrenness are both Saturn issues, and restriction as well is another Saturn word.
So there's going to be failures of crops. They're showing me, this is Australia-wide, and there's going to be deaths, a few deaths of children as well. So there's going to be a lot of anger, and there's going to be a lot of people will brook no tolerance for excuses.
So Jennifer, what do you think is the best way for us as normal people facing all of these obstacles? What do you think is the best thing to do?
I think the best thing to do is to, well, what I get told is to be kind to others. But that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is, if you can even get one or two or three or a community of people together that you can share your labor with, you know, whether you can fruit or whether you can mend something or paint something, or
which is very Aquarius.
Oh,
so Saturn will be in Aquarius at the time of the Saturn return. Aquarius is community and sharing.
Okay, so I feel like there has to be a gathering together of people who can swap resources, and also for protection a little bit, because some people are not going to be quite sane, and so that you may need to have people around you, or to be in a place where you are protected. It's not going to be all the time everywhere, but there'll be patches of it, mainly because people will be so angry, because I feel like it must be going to be sudden. So it must start suddenly next year out of the blue, and people go, oh my God, I've lost all my wealth, or I've lost half my wealth. That people who are wealthy lose half their wealth, they think they're poor, which is not true, but they'll be angry about that, because some of them will think they've been given wrong advice, or they've been told they'll be safe because they're wealthy, but they won't be. You see, no one will be excluded. And then people who are poor, get poorer, can cope better. People who middle class or upper middle class especially get hit really hard. So I would prepare for the worst, and if it's doesn't happen, yippee, right? And if it does happen, you're okay. But I think if you're in country towns and things like that, go to meetings, go to all their stuff to get to know people, because you'll need community. So out of the positive out of all that, because it sounds pretty grim, doesn't it? But it starts next year, I'm telling you. Out of all that, I want to say, out of every adversity, we sometimes build new ways of doing things, which fits in with your Saturn return. So, you know, we may build communities and new ways of building homes, new ways of growing food, new ways of getting water, because there is technology that has been invented in America where you can buy a piece of technology that stands like a water tap that gets hydrogen water out of the air. Right? You can buy that now. It's just super expensive. But it is there. It is there. So these things can happen. And it's through really the hardship that Australia went through in the Depression years and into the 50s that many, many things were started, like
there was no boom without the Depression.
No. And, you know, Hills Hoist started, Ansett Airlines started, all of them finished school.
All of them. Every industry boomed after the war, after the Depression. So that ties in with what I was saying, you know, the Saturn return, you know, hardship and then restructure. But it is in the sign of Aquarius, which is communities sharing, reinventing new ways of you know, utilizing the strengths in community. So it could be that the end result of that hardship is we become more communal.
I think so. I think so. New systems that we haven't seen. So the other thing I wanted to say quickly too is that for years when I was in Geelong, as you know, for a while, I really wanted them to start a community college where people could go and learn how to sew, learn how to darn, learn how to knit, learn how to woodwork, learn how to cook, learn how to make bread, all this sort of stuff. And I did all this research to get it started, and it just never got taken up. But this is what I think should happen. So if you've got any skills out there, if you know how to knit, if you know how to cook, if you know how to preserve, if you know how to grow a garden of vegetables, if you know how to fix things, this is a great time for you to go to a community hall or something and say, I am going to teach this, and start classes and charge for it and earn a small, you know, living from it, and people will come. It's going to start next year. People will flock to you. It will grow and grow and grow and grow, because this will be a need that people will want to know about. Right? So this is a great opportunity for those who are really good with their hands and have done that all their life to teach it now, before people know, I'll go and buy it. But you're not going to have the supplies to buy it. So they're going to have to make it.
Yeah. That's right. Well, perhaps we can leave it on that note. I think in a roundabout way, you two, you are on the same page as me. And that's often what happens in our readings. I start in one direction and then we meet at the same place in the end. And that's what's so fun. So thank you so much for your time, Jennifer. And I'm going to really enjoy your arrival for the 14th of August, where we meet in person in Burleigh Heads in the Gold Coast.
It'd be great. Let's hope that you don't cancel me.
Yes.
Say a prayer for that. All
I'll
right.
come and get you. Okay. See you later.